Hey guys, welcome to today's episode. Today we'll be talking about masculinities, and with me here today I have a guest who I'll let him introduce himself. He's David Nyaga, a very good friend of mine, and we have worked with him before. So I'll give him the platform to say a few words. Thank you for coming.
Thank you as well. It's a pleasure to be here once again. Yeah, as you've been told, my name is David, and Muriungi is my name, Nyaga, and I work with Transformations and running a program called Man Enough, and I'm a person who is very passionate about leadership, masculinity, and generally just life. And I'm glad to be here to see how I can add value to this conversation today.
Thank you so much. So even we'll start with the first question. Since you're very passionate about masculinity, let's try and define masculinity, because masculinity is mostly spoken about, but probably then people don't understand what its real definition is. So what is masculinity?
Hey, that's it's a simple but also very difficult question, because it's if I can say, it's a concept which has a lot of definitions. As in, if you Google about leadership, for example, if you do research about things to do with beauty or even things to do with the sun, you'll find so many definitions. So even masculinity has so many definitions. But to just coin it really, masculinity is it's a behavior. It's a behavior, the perception, the characteristics that are associated with men and boys, with boys and men. That's it. So if you look at this person, you can know whether he's a man or whether he's masculine, based on how they behave, the characteristics, even the behavior, just everything about masculinity or about men summed up in those three things: behavior, characteristics, and also just perception, and even attributes. They are really associated with men and boys. So this is what differentiates us from girls, if I can say that. In my own definition, masculinity really is a software that really defines us as men. It's that software. Just like the way you download a software to a computer and now it functions. It's the same thing. This is something that has been inculcated in us. We have, as we grow up, we get to learn it from, the men who are there present. It could be our dads. It could be the men around our neighborhood, even in social gatherings and everything. So as long as we continue interacting with these different aspects of masculinity of men, it definitely we now get our own perception of our own masculinity. So it's a software that really is downloaded into our system as men. So this is what really makes us to be men. Yeah, so it's not an easy thing to coin, as you can see, but it's even if you describe it, it's more direct, because really it's something that associates us with men. It's associated with men, if I can say that, masculinity. Yeah.
So to my next question, we hear that I believe there's different types of masculinities.
Yeah.
So can you name a few that we know or we are very common with in the society?
There are very, very many definitions. I think, masculinity is a psychological concept. Yeah, it's when you talk about things to do with femininity or masculinity, we're going into gender, but also we're going into psychology, because now you're studying about behaviors and all these things. I've come across a few definitions. One of them being there's a term by psychologists, especially from Europe, who normally say there's a term called hegemonic masculinity. There is composite masculinity. There is subordinate masculinity. Hegemonic is things to do with it's a concept, or is a term in masculinity whereby men who are dominant, who are physically well endowed, have these giftings and skills which make them very different and very superior, are they're celebrated. They are celebrated and they are cherished and they are given more privileges. That's hegemonic. So it's issues to do with dominance. So they look as if they are more superior than these other common or normal men. That's hegemonic. Then when you go to composite masculinity, composite now talks about this kind of men, whereby they don't have these characteristics that hegemonic type of men have, but they don't seem to challenge that. But also they don't want to be associated with that. So they're in the middle. They're just normal men. It's just a normal type of way how we live as men. They don't have these characteristics, these things that make them outstanding. but they are just okay. And they don't want to challenge that, but they don't also want to be associated with that. Then subordinate. Subordinate talks about you being below ordinary. You're not ordinary, you're just below. So it means that you're not this kind of man who is, you're, let me say, you're more of a sissy. You're very, very soft. You're very, very laid back, very chilled, very, but not really chilled, but you're very, very feminine, if I can say that. Subordinary, you're subordinate. That's subordinate masculinity. So it defines that's type of men, who are they're not normal. They are queer. The way they even walk, the way they even talk. It's not like the way a man will talk with confidence or just how a normal man talks. They are very, very queer, if I can say that. So those are the three that I've met. Many others, even toxic masculinity, of what we're going to talk about today, which is also part of that. But there are so many others. There's also what we call marginalized masculinity, of which I can't talk about it here, but it's another one that is also there. And there are so many. So the world of masculinity is very, very vast. There's a lot of research which has been done. And still it's not enough. Yeah, because you will find much more segmented definitions of masculinity. Yeah.
Nice. Personally, I've also learned few new masculinity
I'll tell you.
types. I didn't know which some of them, but not the one that have captured me.
Yes.
The toxic masculinity one,
Yes.
like the one we are supposed to discuss
Yeah.
about. What is toxic masculinity? Because it's actually been a trend in recently, though. Like there's a thing going on that is toxic masculinity.
Yes, it's trending.
So
Yeah.
what is toxic masculinity?
Toxic masculinity now is it's a new thing that is coming up. It's not new. Let me say that. Let me correct myself by saying it's not new, but it's something that is really trending and just arising in our society. Masculinity. Let me start by saying masculinity is not toxic. It's not. So whenever we're talking about toxic masculinity or masculine toxicity, it's just the same thing. It's just about now defining masculinity now, as the attributes, the behaviors that are associated with men, but now to the negative. And they tend to generally benefit me as a man. Let me now just use my example. Now me, I get to really get more certain privileges, certain rights, certain, favors that are just personally to me. But when you look around to the other person, it could be another fellow man, or it could be another woman, for example. It could be even in another context whereby it's a wife, So I get to benefit, but they get to not benefit, if I can say that. They get to be suppressed. So I get to actually arise and emerge, but I'm suppressed. And toxic masculinity is not found in the big things. For example, I can be very, very aggressive to you, Myles. I can be very, very rough. And that is very, very clear. It's very evident. It's out there. So people will notice that I'm very rough. But it's in the small things also, whenever we talk about toxic masculinity, because it's more selfish. So, for example, I don't, like, if you're defining about toxic masculinity again, is that association whereby men tend to say that these things are not, I don't feel as if they are close to my gender. They are not part of my gender. So, for example, washing dishes is not associated with men. It's not associated with me as a man. I don't tend to wash my clothes. That is something that women will do. It's not me. You get? So it's masculinity that is premised on traditionalism. It's fueled largely by traditional aspects. So when you look at how masculinity was defined traditionally, you'll tend to find that men were more celebrated. There were more favors they were given. Still more responsibilities, yes, but more favors, and the women were kept somewhere. So even if you research about toxic masculinity, you'll find that there's a lot of traditionalism that is put there. So you find that as a man, I'm the provider of this home. So if a woman earns more than me, then I can't marry such a woman because they're earning more than me. And in my traditionalism, in my perception, in how I was brought up, that is not my definition of masculinity. So that masculinity then, in the tradition, in those traditional days, was celebrated. But when you bring it into modern day 21st century way of doing things, you'll find it's toxic. It's toxic. Yeah, so that is toxic masculinity. It's masculinity that has not disassociated from traditionalism, and mostly really, in my view as David, it's not really traditionalism. it's more of a state. It's more of it's more of you being selfish, if I can say that. It benefits me as a man. It's not about us. You get? So I don't. If I am married, for example, and I have a child, I'm not supposed to change the diaper of a baby. As in, you Myles, are you? If you think about it, if you're married, will you change the diaper of your baby, or wash the diaper or anything? For example.
In this type of generation, yes, I can.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
But you'll find, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
And you'll find there's some men who actually have refused to let go of such traditional aspects. So it makes it toxic. And you see, such things are not so evident, as I'd said before. It's very subtle. But when you just add a 1 + 1, how this man is behaving, you'll find this is toxic. Because you know what makes it wrong for you to change your diaper, for example, of your baby. Or let me just put another one now, because now I'm going into signs of toxic masculinity. As a man, normally you're told not to express our feelings. Do you know that is very toxic?
Very.
Because the more you refuse to say how you're feeling, or just to express your feelings, but not expressing it the way women will do, but of course in a safe space where I just talk and say, this is what I'm going through. The more I don't share my feelings in a very constructive way, the more I implode inside. And the net effect is that the people around me will see that I am not doing well, and I may actually tend to be aggressive, for example. And people wonder, why am I so aggressive? I've just said hi to you. Why are you not even saying hi to me? Or why are you reacting widely, you know? So in a sense now you get to affect others around you. So that makes it toxic. Even you're not just sharing, a man, sorry, not you, but a man not sharing their own, expressing their own feelings, and so saying just how their day was or how they're feeling at the moment, that becomes a problem, and eventually it becomes toxic. Yeah.
So since you are studied about the signs of toxic masculinity, are there more that you can tell from?
Yeah.
Can you give us a few examples, just the ones that we can see maybe on a physical perspective or even online, because mostly nowadays people are online a lot.
Yes. There's a lot of toxic, just if you look around you, there's so many examples. And you get to see toxic masculinity if now let's say it's contextual. Even masculinity, how we describe masculinity, let me just start by saying how we describe masculinity is also very contextual. Meaning, in a certain society, let's put it even generally, like in East Africa, or Africans in general, there's a way we view masculinity. For example, you need to undergo circumcision. You need to be initiated so that you can be defined to be a man, isn't it? When you go to Europe, it's different. There's no such thing as being circumcised and everything. There's another definition. So it's a socially agreed definition of masculinity. So it's very contextual. So even once you put it into context now, with regards to signs of masculinity, look at even in a married space whereby you find that the man does not want to do some things because he doesn't feel as if they're gender. So I've talked about changing diapers, talked about even washing dishes, washing clothes, your own clothes sometimes. And you see, like, for example, in the context, you find the wife is sick. So what do? Many of them, if they're well-resourced, they will tend to do what? Employ, other 2 maids or something. So that, I can't do these things because in how we say in Kiswahili, mwanaume afanyangi vitu zingine. So there is that. There is bullying, cyberbullying, whereby you find a man hides behind a certain profile in social media, in Facebook or Twitter. He's called so and so, and then instead of them outrightly coming or saying this is wrong, or criticizing someone openly, they will tend to just, like I saw recently in this status, one of my cousins. I hope you not even watch this, but I remember one of my cousins. So Boniface Mwangi posts something about something, then he comments and says something so derogatory because he knows that we will not see, as the other people, cousins and all family, will not see it, so we'll just put a status. So one day I was watching Boniface Mwangi posting something, so I just read to the comments, and then I see, this is my cousin talking like this, So there's this narrative or this wave that some men behave whereby instead of you outrightly just coming out and saying, I'm not agreeing with what you're saying, they hide. They tend to just say it something slowly. They tend to gossip about it or say something small. That is another one. Another one could be just with bullying now, physical bullying. Accepting physical bullying, it's wrong. So there's this narrative that a man needs to stand and defend himself. But what if you're not strong enough to defend yourself as a boy now? Let's say as a boy. You're not strong enough to defend yourself, you're small. Then you're bullied, and then you find other boys around you or even the men around you just agreeing and saying, next time jipiganie, next time fight for yourself. That is wrong. That's a sign of toxic masculinity. And if you want to know whether masculinity is the greatest indicator of future masculinity is found by the state of the current masculinity and the state of the current way of how the boy child is behaving, So if there's a lot of bullying, many boys undergoing a lot of bullying, then that's a very big indicator of the men that will be there in 30 years to come. So allowing bullying. And many others, like another lady I had talking just about toxic masculinity saying, it was a very interesting example. You're saying, because men, we are not supposed to serve ourselves. The women are supposed to serve us. So there's this one time, there was a group of men. It's a very interesting discrimination. A group of men are just sitting at a table, and there was 2 which was put on the table, and a few cups. So of course, naturally it's the men are supposed to serve themselves. But in this case, those men were waiting for a woman to come and serve them, because they believe that a man cannot serve himself tea. He needs to be served.
Yeah.
That's a sign of toxic masculinity. So it is just us men not doing some things because we feel it's not part of our agenda. It's not part really of our agenda. It's not associated with us. We'd rather women do it. So what do? We just tend to forget about it or ignore it. And if the issue comes to us now, we just do it. But even as we do it, we don't do it with the heart that it deserves. Yeah. So that really is one of the signs of toxic masculinity. So many others, but really those are one of the few reasons or examples of toxic masculinity.
Do you think that masculinity is socially constructed?
It is. Yeah, it is socially constructed because it's constructed socially. Even, masculinity in general, even toxic masculinity, it's socially constructed. So if I go seeing that my father, if I grow seeing that an authority, even it could be my father, it could be a teacher, behaving in a certain way, and I continue seeing the same pattern over and over again socially, then definitely I'll just become what they are showing me. It's socially constructed. So just to give an example just about masculinity, definitions of masculinity. You see, like now in Africa, of course, I talked about initiation. When you go to parts of the Iberian countries, Iberian now, Portugal, Spain, when you go to West Indies, how they socially agree about who a man is very different. Like, there's a book I read one time that was defining masculinity and said, when you go to the areas of Macedonia and Greece, how they used to define masculinity, you'll be surprised. Just like the way you undergo initiation, how a man now used to graduate into becoming a man, they will do what we call deep sea diving. You know the way you can dive? Mm-hmm. So you dive into a deep sea. You don't even have any scuba diving or what do we call it, these protective things that help you breathe underneath the sea. They will swim deep into the ocean and try and hunt a fish. And they will go deep. They will dive with a spear. And what they need to do is for about 10-15 minutes, they need to actually hunt and come back with a fish. And it's deep, not just these shallow waters. They swim deep. And if you don't come with any fish or anything that you've hunted, then you're not considered to be a man. And that is socially. That is social. That is a society. The society there has agreed that this is how we define masculinity. Yeah. So it's the same thing. So if the society agrees to allow some things that are toxic to happen, cyberbullying to happen, or these norms about being a man, that a man should not be doing such things, then it's wrong. I'm not saying that now, for example, let me just also qualify myself for the audience not to think that I'm now saying that men need to wash toilets, for example. As in, you need to do, there are some things that if, like for example, for me, I'm married, and honestly, I don't find struggle washing dishes. And my wife also loves washing dishes. Sometimes I tend to wash my own clothes sometimes. Like I will like washing my shirts, white shirts. I like washing them because sometimes I don't feel someone to wash, and I like doing it, or ironing my own clothes. I can do that. So there are some things that now I am not saying that men should do, but then again, look at it this way: how can we actually be supportive? If you're going to do some things, it should be with an attitude of support. How can I support my wife, for example, if she's not feeling well? Can I just say today I'll cook? You know, can I say just today I'll clean the house because either she's not feeling well, or maybe it's not in a area of strength. Or another one, for example, I am a chef, Myles. I am a chef, and I am gifted at cooking. And I'm married, for example, or even I'm not married. But if I'm a chef and I'm gifted at cooking, then it should be natural for me to also cook at home. You know, it should be from the supports mentality. It should be from a gifting mentality. If I'm gifted in doing something or I don't find struggle, let me do it. You know, that is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Fantastic. That was a very good explanation. To my last question.
Yes.
Since toxic masculinity, as you said, it was there before. Maybe we can say right now it's more rampant, or maybe because of the social medias, like we see it more.
Yes.
So how can we prevent toxic masculinity? How can we have a positive masculinity in the society whereby men and women live in an understanding manner?
Yeah.
Or whereby that as men we can do things for ourselves.
Yes.
Like in terms of, like as you said, washing dishes. It's not a must that your wife or your girlfriend should do the dishes all the time. In terms also cooking, even men, we do cook, so it's not a must that your wife should come home from work to cook. Also, you, if you are home, you can cook. So how can we prevent this toxic masculinity even for future generation, for our society rather?
I think one thing that just on top of my mind really, men need to work on their security, into their own identity as men, because toxic masculinity is also rooted from a very insecure definition or a perception of yourself as a man. So you need to be secure as a man. Once in a while, cook for your wife, you know. Once in a while, support where you can support, as in be secure in your own masculinity. It does not make you less of a man if you say that today I'll wash the dishes, or today, you know, I will take my wife somewhere. There's a time someone was saying, I normally take my wife to go and, for a spa. And of course, I go there, wait for her, and then come back. That is how they do it. And they are secure. And you can see they are still men, you know. Yeah. So men need to be secure in their own masculinity. The second one is that association. I think one of the signs of toxic masculinity I forgot to say is that if you find a man who is a lone ranger, you don't have an association, don't have brothers around you, don't have fellow men who can challenge the things that you're doing, where you can even say, let me run this decision through the fellow brothers and say, what do they think about it? You know, if you find a man who is not accountable in how they do their things, then that's a very big sign, because they will tend to just do things the way they want, and as a result now, the net effect is that they will be, with the decisions they make, there's a lot of impact. It can affect someone else around them, so they need to find association, find men who can actually challenge what you're thinking about masculinity. Challenge it, of course. And that's not to say that now you agree with what they're saying, but just try and be in a space where someone helps you think about your own view of masculinity. That's the second thing. There was a third thing, whereby go for trainings and programs that touch on this. Like, for example, there's a Man Enough program. There are so many programs out there for men that men don't know about. So go for personal development courses and just tend to see, am I actually doing well in my view as a man? Of course, so find how you can do it. The other thing, of course, I've just remembered right now, is that also men need to accept criticism. We need to accept criticism. Criticism is very good. If it's constructive, it's a very good criticism. I think for us as men, we don't tend to allow someone to just criticize what I'm doing. And that of course, that also is a very big sign of insecurity, because you feel, why should I be questioned about this decision I've made? You know, so accept criticism as a man. If you know you're going wrong somewhere, just accept and just think about, okay, what is this person saying about what I'm doing? Could it be that actually I'm wrong? Just think about it, you know. So those are some of the things we can stop toxic masculinity. And then, of course, women also really are both recipients of toxic masculinity, but also they can be enhancers of toxic masculinity. So we need the women on board to come and say, okay, them saying, what is their view of toxic masculinity? What are some of the things that men are doing that are not right? So we can also hear from them and then say, okay, is it right? What do we need to change? So also we need the women on board. So those are some of the few things we can do to stop toxic masculinity or to just prevent. Myles, I have a lot of things to say about this. There's another idea that has come to me. We also need to make sure that, you know what, the boy child, that boy who is 8 years old, 7 years old, even 10, how do you actually raise them up to become men? So we need fathers on board. We also need the men on board to see how we can mentor the boy child, because, you know, if there's no intentional mentorship of the boy child, they'll just learn. Because now toxic masculinity is out there. It's seen. Even how politicians talk, of course, for example. How even in the news, we get to see all these things. So you see this boy will interact with that world. And if they're not properly grounded, that will become their grounding. So eventually you see this young man, when they become 25 years old, 20 years old, or in that age of accountability, they tend to spread this narrative of toxic masculinity. So it's to see how do we prevent also, do a preventive work of mentorship, seeing how can we mentor that boy so that they cannot become, that man who is toxic or who enhances toxic masculinity. So those are the few ones. I think I'll rather stop because I have still another one. Let me just stop there for now. Those are the things. Yeah. No, for now it's just those ones really.
Okay. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you so much as well.
As always, you always come through with very strategic explanations. I've learned so much today. So it's quite entertaining, especially to learn.
Yes.
You know, you learn with fun, and actually we have. And I'm so happy to have done this topic with you.
Thank you.
And I hope to see more and more of you, because we have to support men out there.
Yes.
We have to support them any way possible. And to the men out there, it's really important when you're positive in life, and being toxic, it's not cool. Yeah, embrace yourself. As David had said, have a good self-esteem, right? Believe in yourself. You expressing yourself doesn't make you weak. It actually makes you stronger.
Correct.
It makes you stronger. So thanks so much, David, for coming.
Karibu.
Hope to see you next time.
Thank you so much as well.